Sloppy Saturdays back here with another video, and today we're going over a very monumental change in college football. We're going over the change in the college football playoff bracket. Now, if anybody stayed in tune last year, the first year of this 12-team bracket was completely awful. The way they set it up with the buys were terrible, and a team like Oregon, who got the #1 overall seed, honestly got screwed in their bracket. And it is very surprising to me that this change had to happen. I thought when they were making the 12-team playoffs that they would have this at least right, and they didn't. Again, credit to them for fixing their mistake. They changed it the following year. But we're going to go over everything, how this change impacts the college football playoff bracket for the future. But not only that, how it would have affected last year's bracket. And we're also going to talk about changes I would like to see in this bracket in the future. So let's get into everything. Now, college football playoff, like we just said, they changed their bracket format. Instead of it being 4 conference champions automatically get the bye, now it's any top 4 teams can get the bye, and 5 conference champions will be rewarded a college football playoff spot no matter what. This is such a better way to do this. Now, when you look at 4 buys, it's not always going to be that 4 conference champions are going to be the 4 best teams in college football. It really never happens that way. When we look at how dominant the SEC is, how dominant the Big Ten was last year, like you have dominant conferences in college football. This is not like a pro sport where you could just give each conference champion a bye, where like they do it in divisions in pro sports. It doesn't work that way. When we look at the past of college football, when you look at like Georgia's and Alabama's, some teams are the 2 best teams in college football are in the same exact conference. So this allows the rankings to withhold. All year you rank teams for them to change the buys. It doesn't make sense at all. So this is perfect. You could have 2 SEC teams have the bye, 2 Big Ten teams have the bye. Again, if you have 2 teams going to a conference championship that's both undefeated and the public knows these are the 2 best teams and one of them loses, it doesn't eliminate them from getting a bye. But not only that, it leaves everything wide open. It doesn't allow you to have handcuffs on who could have the bye. We saw last year Notre Dame was ineligible to get a bye. Now you could have any conference, any team get a bye. I absolutely love it. This is how it should be. Now, the other reason why this affects things massively is because we saw a team like Ohio State play Oregon in the first round. That should have never happened. You have these teams without the best ranking teams being set up as the seeds. You have rankings all over the place. You have Boise State being a 4 seed. It is absolutely ridiculous. And for last year, like we mentioned, we were going to go over last year, Oregon and Penn State played for the Big Ten championship. Oregon won that game. So Oregon was the #1 overall seed last year. In Oregon's first round matchup and Penn State's second round matchup, Penn State played Boise State, who they were a double-digit favorite over. Oregon had to play Ohio State, who they were a underdog against. As a #1 overall seed, you have to be an underdog in your first round matchup. But the team that you beat for the conference championship last year was a double-digit favorite. So this seeding was so messed up. Again, it should never be able to work that way. And now allowing the rankings to withhold and having the teams that make the college football playoffs, their seeding basically rely on the rankings. This is the perfect setup. You're never going to see a first round matchup where a #1 overall seed is an underdog, or a first round matchup where the team with a bye is a 14-point underdog. Like that should not happen ever. And credit to college football, they did change this. Now, would have changed things last year? It definitely would have changed the route for some teams, and I think it would have changed the national championship matchup. I think instead of seeing Oregon, Ohio State in the first round for Oregon, I think you would see them in the national championship together. And I believe that would have changed viewership as well. I think Oregon, Ohio State, even though Ohio State blew the doors off Oregon in the college football playoffs, I believe as a final, that would have been a more anticipated, more viewed final, because you would have had Oregon, who was an undefeated team, facing that loaded Ohio State team. I think it definitely would have been more of a marquee matchup than Notre Dame, Ohio State. But again, Notre Dame, Ohio State was a great matchup. Margaret Freeman, one of the best coaches. And Notre Dame was a great team last year, not to take anything away for them. But again, I think you would have had a closer opening line for that game. And I think it would have been definitely a more anticipated, more view matchup. So it would have changed things. But I really think Ohio State was the most talented team looking back on it. When you look at Ohio State, the route they had to get to the national championship, they had to get through Tennessee, they had to get through Texas, they had to get through Notre Dame. So they had to get through Oregon. So they did have a very tough matchup. I mean, you're talking about a team that faced two SEC teams and the undefeated Big 12 and undefeated Big 10 champion, number one overall seed. Again, it makes a ton of sense. Now, going back to what I said, I absolutely love how it's going to go based on your ranking now, how it's not going to go based on the conference championship buys, because it was a little ridiculous to see teams that got a bye. I mean, when we're looking at last year, you're looking at Arizona State, who got a bye. Credit, they played a great game against Texas, and Boise State, who got a bye. They were really no matchup for Penn State. You have teams with a bye going into their first matchup losing it and really having no shot in the game, being double-digit underdogs. Again, that should never happen. And going back to what I said again, I love the ability to have no handcuffs on who could get a bye. Have an independent team get a bye, two teams in the same conference could get a bye. Like, all that makes complete sense because, like I said, very different from pro sports. A lot of times in college football, basically every time, two of the top four teams are going to be in the same conference. Like, it's going to happen. Last year, what it would have been under this new rules, it would have been Penn State, Oregon, Texas, Georgia, the teams with the bye. Again, you're talking about two SEC teams, two Big Ten teams. Those would have been the four best teams going into the college football playoffs that would have deserved the bye. Now, again, that's way different in making four conference champions the buys. Because you have four conference champions the buys. We all know Arizona State and Boise State aren't two top four teams, and then it makes the bracket a mess going into it. Now, I definitely think college football could make significant changes again in future years to make this bracket a lot better. What I would like to see happen, I know this is a very controversial topic, and I don't know if it will ever happen. I would like to see teams that have the upper seed be able to play on their home field all the way up until a national championship. I think, again, it is such a huge advantage, and it could make for worse games almost, because when you talk about teams traveling out of conference, like if an SEC team has to play at Penn State in the cold in January, that is a tough environment to play for. But I believe, again, college football has the best environments in sports. I think that should be utilized to the college football to make college football a more popular sport. I think I went to a college football playoff game last year. It was Penn State SMU, that opening round matchup. Penn State absolutely blew the doors off them, but the environment was absolutely crazy. I would like to see the fans be able to get more involved in these college football playoffs, because when you look at these games, sometimes Penn State might be playing in Atlanta, Georgia in the second round of the college football playoffs. And again, I would like to see these college kids have more of a hand on these games. Obviously, if Penn State or Oregon or whoever is playing a college football playoff game so far away from where their program is located, you're not going to have as big of a crowd factor. And like I said, I believe college football is one of the most insane environments, if not the most insane environments in sports. So I think having them play all the way to the national championship, I think that would be a huge advantage. It would make teams really want to earn that seed even more than they already do, because it would be so hard, like I said, for a Tennessee to play in cold weather like we saw last year. I'm playing in Ohio State. They played in Columbus, Ohio. I think that game was like 30 degrees with wind chill, and you're talking about Tennessee, who was really playing hot games all year. It's a huge factor. And then again, I think the biggest element to a huge program is their crowd noise, how enthusiastic their fans are. So I think bringing that into the college football playoffs would be absolutely huge. Again, I don't know if it will ever happen, because we look at these college football games and they're playing in major pro arenas. Again, it's all about a money type thing and deals. So I don't know if college football players would be able to make the most amount of money if they were playing in these programs, playing at these schools instead of playing at these NFL type arenas. But I would personally love for the fans to have a huge factor all throughout the college football playoffs. That's one change I would love to see happen. Will it ever happen due to money? I don't know. Again, teams would really have to gear up, because you're talking about teams playing in extremely hostile environments instead of neutral sites. And not only that, some teams playing in completely different circumstances weather-wise than they would ever play in. And the last thing I would really like to see in the college football playoffs, and I think this would make the bracket perfect, even more than the first change I just said, I think there should be reseeding. This is a very hard thing to do. They do it in the NFL. But I think, for example, if Oregon is the number one overall seed and you see an upset happen in the first round where like a 12 seed or an 11 seed wins, I think they should be able to play that 12th or 11th seed. I don't think it should be I don't think the matchup should be already set and Oregon just plays the winner of this matchup. I think it should be reseeding. I think that would make the number one, number two, number three overall seeds at a huge advantage to be able to reseed to play the worst opponent. I think that's how you make things very, very fair. Again, that's another hard thing to do as well because for the pros, it's a little different, but for a college program, they want to know where they're going to be the next week if they win. If you do reseeding, a bunch of things could change. So that definitely leaves things in question. But that's another change that I would love to see happen in this college football playoff. But again, to sum it up, the college football playoffs did the right thing finally. We saw how flawed that bracket was. We saw Oregon get completely screwed. Oregon should have been a team that was in the national championship. Instead, they were out in their first round matchup. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, this major change in the college football playoff bracket, and we are